There are forces of good and forces of evil at work in the world today. What are these forces? Who is responsible for the good? And who is responsible for the evil? Richard Schaff talks about current events which are rarely discussed by the mainstream media, events that affect us all. This program seeks to identify, to inform, and to equip the believer for what's ahead. Welcome to What in the World is Going On?
This is What in the World is Going On. I'm your host, Richard Schaff. The program is sponsored by Lincoln Log Homes. We are pro-Christian, pro-American, pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, and here only by the grace of God. Well, in a major victory for both President Trump and national Republicans, North Carolina GOP State Senator Dan Bishop won a fiercely contested special U.S. House election for the 9th District. This was widely seen as a bellwether for the president's chances in 2020. The clean sweep that the president made was long emphasized for the national implications that were at stake. I want to just mention something here. I watched the returns come in on replay at about 1 o'clock in the morning. And you talk about prejudice news and fake news. I got to share this with you. It's not fake news. It's just slanted news. It was on MSNBC, and I'd been surfing. And they had some good returns coming on. Now, this is after the race was over with, at like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning on a rerun. And here they've got this carnival pitchman type. It's a two-man show. One man's kind of the host in the program. You've seen it. They all do it on election returns. Somebody else is over there pulling up charts and going from one screen to another, showing why this had happened, and while one guy's got to carry this section. And you've seen it. Anyway, here's this carny on NBC going over, pointing out why the Dems going to win, because he's doing better than expected here, and the Republicans not doing any good over there. This guy is so excited I thought he was going to wet himself. I want to tell you, it was pathetic. It was a carnival act. But what they didn't know was, going out on the rerun, down at the bottom of the screen, it said the Republican had won. Got it, folks? They're telling why the Republican can't win, how Trump is going to be humiliated. They're really so excited about this. But down at the bottom, the Republican won. And you know what? Previously, this was a contested election, as you local folks know. In the previous, a year ago, they haven't had a rep for a year. The previous Republican won by 400 votes. But this guy, Bishop, he won by 4,000. Yet they're saying how Trump didn't help him. And even now, the after effect on this, they're talking about the fact that Trump is in trouble because they didn't win by enough. You talk about slanted news. It was a circus. I really enjoyed it. Glad I could share it with you. Well, let's talk a little bit about impeachment. The Democrats are pushing impeachment even after 3 years of lies. But let me tell you, it's not going to happen. Bottom line, I'll tell you why it's not going to happen. Impeachment trial is in the Senate, and they would have to be 2/3 of the senators vote to impeach President Trump. And the Republicans have a little advantage. They're in the majority in the Senate. So it ain't going to happen. Now, the House can make fools of themselves and draft up all the articles. Well, during his opening monologue on Hannity last Monday night, Sean Hannity slammed the Democrat majority in the House of Representatives, saying the left-wing legislators are totally disinterested in helping the American people. He said, and I quote, "As we speak, the Democratic majority is not interested in passing any legislation to protect our country, to secure our borders, or help bolster our economy. They're singularly focused on one thing and one thing only. That is to destroy President Trump and everybody that supports him." Just thought you'd like to know, folks, why it can't happen. And on the same subject, did you see that Representative Jordan, boy, he's a great guy, the Republican from Ohio, he said that the Dems should probe Comey, not seek impeachment. Democratic congressmen should change their focus from impeachment to probing former FBI Director James Comey and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. A quote from Representative Jim Jordan. He said this on Fox News, Fox and Friends last Monday. What you're focused on, he went on to say, what you're focused on is going on after the president. What you're slowly focused on going after the president, you can't do the best job for our country. That's been the problem with the Dems. A quote from Jordan. Jim Comey, I'm continuing to quote Jim Jordan, Jim Comey, who is solely the guy responsible for putting the country through 3 years of this saga that we've lived through, insisting many Americans come to him wanting to know, quote, when's someone going to jail over the alleged wrongdoing in the Trump, Russia, and Clinton email probes. Anyway, at the end of the quote, last month, the Justice Department Inspector General report said Comey violated FBI policy when he revealed details about discussions with President Donald Trump to people outside the agency. Last year, the Inspector General also criticized Comey's handling of the probe into Clinton's use of a private server for emails while she was Secretary of State. He went on to say it doesn't stop there. They're going to continue to push this ridiculous impeachment narrative. When they're focused on this warrantless impeachment inquiry, you're not getting things done, the things that need to be doing. Like, we need to fix the border situation. We need to deal with the intellectual property theft that China's doing. Things we're supposed to do. Things we're supposed to deal with on the Judiciary Committee. And meanwhile, folks, remember, the Senate has to vote to impeach by a 2/3 majority. Steve Scalise also mocked the Democrats' impeachment effort, said it amounts to a waste of taxpayer money. Scalise made his comment in a tweet last Thursday afternoon. The Dems' math, he said, almost 3 years since the real Donald Trump was elected, plus 6 months since the Mueller report showed no collusion, plus 9 months of a Dems House majority. What does it equal? 0 results for the American people, while they still waste your time and tax dollars on a sham impeachment markup today. What a joke, he noted. And by the way, I really like to follow Alan Dershowitz. You know, he's a liberal. He's a Democrat. He voted for Clinton by his own admission. Well, here's what he said. He said the Democrats wanting to push for President Donald Trump's impeachment won't go far with claims made in connection with the payment of hush money to adult film actress Stormy Daniels or anyone, as making payments would not have been against the law. This is a quote from Alan Dershowitz on Newsmax TV last Monday. Continuing to quote Dershowitz, the president has the authority as a candidate for president of the United States to contribute as much money as he wants from his own pocket to whatever cause he wanted. He said this to Newsmax host John Bachman. Continuing to quote Dershowitz, he would have the authority to give $1 billion to a woman to hush her up. There's no crime in doing that. The only crime would be in paying money to a witness in front of a grand jury or a witness for the prosecution. He admitted that it may not be pleasant to pay hush money, but he said that's what's called a settlement. You know, it's done all the time, and it's not illegal. I don't think we're going to see the Democrats go anywhere with this, he mentioned. And again, folks, I remind you, no matter what they do, it has to pass the Senate with a 2/3 majority. And let's look at this regarding the campaign 2020. The TV's war against Trump leaves little time for the Dems. Much as they were 4 years ago, the big 3 evening news broadcasts continue to be obsessed with Donald Trump. They're pounding him incessantly with highly negative coverage. But then as now, the network's fixation on Trump seems to be leaving comparative little time for his would-be presidential challengers. From June 1st through August 31st, MRC analysts found the networks devoted 838 minutes of airtime, that's nearly 14 hours, to coverage of President Trump personally, the vast majority of which was negative, of course. Now note, this only examines coverage of Trump himself, not generic stories about his administration's activity or those of other top-ranking officials, which accounted for an additional 213 minutes of evening news time. The airline devoted to Trump, the time, was 11 times greater than that spent on the leading Democrat candidate, former Vice President Joe Biden. He just got 74 minutes, and vastly more than the networks gave California Senator Kamala Harris. She got 30 minutes. South Bend Mayor Pete, he got 15 minutes, and Massachusetts Senator Warren just under 14 minutes. Overall, 21 Democrat candidates, including some that have since departed the race, combined, they all shared 187 minutes of evening news this summer. That's less than 1/4 of the time that Trump alone got. On the GOP side, Joe Walsh received a scant 35 seconds of coverage after he announced his candidacy, and campaign of former Massachusetts Governor William Weld has yet to be acknowledged by any of the three evening newscasts. Clearly, this heavy coverage is not intended to boost Trump. Overall, the spin on his coverage during the 3 months was 90% negative, roughly the same as we found throughout his presidency. But boy, they're sure robbing the Dems of any coverage, and it's all the time on the news on this subject is going to Trump. And where does all this lead us now? Well, an average poll identified with Trump over the Dems on ideology. As of Thursday, September 12th, the average voter identifies closer with Donald Trump on ideology than former Vice President Joe Biden and all other Democrat presidential contenders. This according to a poll conducted by the University of South California and the LA Times and reported on the Daily Caller. Of 5,367 Democratic primary voters polled, Trump was given 86 on a scale of 0 to 10, with 100 being the most conservative and 0 the most liberal. Biden came in at 46, Harris at 31, Warren 30, Sanders 25, and the others were significantly further left. The average voters gave themselves a score of 52, with Trump given a 12-point difference and Biden a 14-point difference. One of Biden's big advantages seems to be that people thought he was the most likely to beat candidate Donald Trump, a quote from Robert Shrum. Anyway, less than half the people polled were registered Democrats. Roughly 1/4 are independent and none or not aligned with any party. And by the way, folks, in the Dem debate, who won that Dem debate? I heard one commentator say, and I happen to agree with him, Donald Trump won it. I think he did too. Now to the Middle East for a little bit. Did you see where the U.S. dropped 40 tons of bomb on an ISIS-infested island in Iraq? I didn't think you did, but they did. The U.S.-led coalition says American warplanes have dropped 40 tons of bomb on an island in the Tigris River. This island was infested with members of the Islamic State. The coalition said F-15 and F-35 planes took part in the bombing on the island, which is a central province of state just north of the capital of Baghdad. The attack is part of operations carried out by Iraqi forces in the U.S. coalition against ISIS. You know, we defeated them in the war in Iraq back in 2017. Thank you, Mr. President. Still in the Middle East, Netanyahu vows to annex all settlements, starting with the Jordan Valley. That's right, he announced last Tuesday that if reelected, he's going to apply sovereignty over all settlements in Judea and Samaria, starting with the Jordan Valley. Incidentally, folks, their election is next Tuesday, the 17th. Netanyahu said the steps will be taken in coordination with the administration of U.S. President Donald Trump. He revealed that Trump intends to announce his Middle East peace plan soon after the September 17th elections, adding that he'd wait with his annexation plan until after Trump's, quote, deal of a century, end quote, is revealed. I'm not going to do anything without getting a clear mandate from the public, he said. And so the citizens of Israel, I ask you for a clear mandate to do this. Give me your vote in this election. There is a unique and once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to do something with broad consensus and bring safe, permanent borders to the state of Israel. This will ensure that Judea and Samaria do not become like Gaza, and they become communities along the border of Gaza. Pointing to a map of the Jordan Valley, he said Israel would carry out plans without annexing a single Palestinian and ensuring that Palestinians maintain complete freedom of movement throughout the West Bank. He hinted that the plan had been coordinated with the U.S. Over the past few months, he said, I led a diplomatic effort. Over the past few days, the diplomatic conditions have become ready. He said this in what was seen as a reference to the meeting in London on Thursday night with U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper and long phone calls last weekend with U.S. Vice President Pence. Sources close to Netanyahu said that Israel keeping the Jordan Valley is in Trump's plan. Israeli officials informed the White House in advance about Netanyahu's statement. The White House peace team did not consider the statement as one that would prevent a future agreement between Israel and the Palestinians. There is no change in the United States policy, the White House said, quoting, "We will release our vision for peace after the Israeli election and work to determine the best path forward to bring long-sought security, opportunity, and stability to the region." Be good to get that settled if we could. I wonder if there's any way they can avoid giving us, our president, the credit for the hand he's had to play in this. Meanwhile, did you see where the Israeli forces were making a strike in Israel? This after rocket sirens forced Netanyahu off the stage when he was speaking. Israeli aircraft struck in Gaza last Wednesday, the hours after rockets from the Palestinian enclave had triggered sirens that forced President Netanyahu off the stage at an election rally in Israel. The Israeli military said 15 targets were hit, including a weapons manufacturing facility, a naval compound used by militants, and tunnels belonging to Hamas. Hamas, is the dominant armed forces in Gaza. Hours earlier, bodyguards had to rush Netanyahu to a shelter in the southern Israeli city of Ashdod. That's when the sirens sounded during a Tuesday evening rally, a week ahead of the general election. Netanyahu was unhurt. Several minutes later, he continued his speech, which was broadcast live on social media by his right-wing Likud party. It said last Wednesday's strikes in Gaza came in response to the rocket launchings. There was no immediate claim of responsibility for Tuesday's rocket attack, which happened shortly after Netanyahu announced a plan to annex part of the occupied West Bank if reelected in the national ballot on September 17th. We got to watch the situation in the Middle East. We know why. That's where the big war is going to come and be started. That's our number one spot to watch in the world. And this, good news, a historic milestone. The Senate confirms the 150th Trump judicial nominee. The United States Senate confirmed President Trump's 150th judicial nominee last Wednesday. This helps to fulfill the president's campaign promise to remake the federal bench on a conservative bent. Judiciary Chairman Lindsey Graham called the number of confirmations a, quote, historic milestone, end quote. These conservative judicial appointments will impact our nation for years to come, a quote from the South Carolina Republican. 6 court nominees won confirmation Wednesday, bringing the president's total number of appointed judges to the lower federal court to 105. Mr. Trump has also appointed 43 circuit court nominees and 2 Supreme Court justices since taking office. The pace has far outdone President Obama, who saw only 20 circuit court nominees and 74 district court judges confirmed during the same period of time. Mr. Obama, though, like Mr. Trump, had 2 Supreme Court appointments his first 3 years. Liberal advocacy groups said the 150 judicial confirmations is alarming, stressing the need to make judicial nominees in the courts a 2020 campaign issue. I'll bet we will make it a campaign issue, don't you, fellow listeners? And now back to the U.S. and some miscellaneous items. Graham was on Hannity. He asked that the Inspector General testify under oath about the FISA abuse report. Senate Judiciary Chair Lindsey Graham stopped by Hannity's program last Wednesday night to comment on the Inspector General's report into widespread FISA abuse, saying Mr. Horowitz will testify under oath in the coming weeks. When are you, or when are we, going to get the Inspector General's report on FISA's abuse? Asked Hannity. Graham replied, I can promise you this. The Senate Judiciary Committee will call Mr. Horowitz, and he will testify under oath about this report. We're going to declassify as much as we can, including FISA warrant applications. A quote from Senator Graham. He continued, transparency and accountability are my goals. Hear what I believe without any doubt. The dossier remains unverified to this day, and the author of the dossier was on the payroll of the Democratic Party. A quote again from Senator Graham. Graham called on Attorney General Bill Barr to release a series of documents that were related to allegations of widespread FISA abuse during the 2016 election, saying the American people have a right to view the complete results of the Inspector General's investigation. Since March 28, 2018, the Department's Inspector General, Michael Horowitz, has been conducting an investigation into the Department and the Federal Bureau of Investigation's compliance with legal requirements and with applicable Department and FBI policies and procedures in applications filed with the FISA court. This all related to Carter Page. According to Inspector Horowitz, the investigation is nearing completion. Graham wrote in the following a letter to the Attorney General, and I'll read it. In order for the Inspector General to be able to present the most complete results of this investigation to Congress and the American people, certain documents will need to be declassified and released to the public. I write to urge you to declassify all documents the Inspector General identifies as appropriate for declassification as much as possible without harming national security. Boy, that'll be a sweetheart when it happens, won't it, folks? And something I don't think you've heard of about in the liberal press, I didn't until I got this. Did you know that abortion was a leading cause of death worldwide in 2018? Did you know that they killed 42 million people? Well, they did. As of December 31st, 2018, that was last year, the end of the year, more human beings died in abortions than any other cause of death in 2018. This new report indicates and reminds us again of giving a heartbreaking reminder about the prevalence of abortion. Well, anyway, statistics compiled by Worldometers indicate that there were nearly 42 million abortions worldwide in 2018. The independent site collects data from governments and other reputable organizations and then reports the data along with estimates and projections based on those numbers. Breitbart News contrasted the abortion murders to other causes of death, including cancer, AIDS, traffic accidents, and suicide, and found that abortions far outnumber every other issue. Here's more on them from the report. As of December 31st, 2018, there have been some 41.9 abortions performed in the course of the year. By contrast, 8.2 million people died of cancer same year. 5 million from smoking, 1.7 million died from AIDS. That's worldwide, 2018. It also reveals the total number of abortions in the world based on the latest statistics on abortion published by the World Health Organization. Globally, just under a quarter of all pregnancies, 23%, were ended by abortion in 2018. And for every live birth, every 33 live births, 10 infants were aborted. This is a horrible record, folks. A horrible record. A further update on Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein collected dirt on his powerful pals and filmed rich celebrities as an insurance policy. This was recently claimed. Ghislaine Maxwell, she's the daughter of disgraced late media mogul Robert Maxwell. Well, she's denied procuring young sex slaves for the creepy banker. However, a friend of the socialite told Vanity Fair that Miss Maxwell said, quote, Epstein filmed guests for his private Caribbean island, which was recently raided by the FBI. According to the report, the sources said she believed the child abuser was videotaping everyone on the island as an insurance policy as blackmail. Her quote, Maxwell's lawyers have reportedly not responded to requests for response to these accusations. Last year, Epstein was told a New York Times journalist that he had dirt on, quote, an astonishing number of celebrities and powerful people. He told writer James B. Stewart that an A-lister confided in him about their sexual interests and drug use because of his notoriety. Stewart wrote, quote, the overriding impression I took away from our roughly 90-minute conversation was that Mr. Epstein knew an astounding number of rich, famous, and powerful people and had photos to prove it. He also claimed to know a great deal about these people, some of it potentially damaging or embarrassing, including details about their supposed sexual activities and recreational drug use. Stewart said Epstein, who was jailed for 18 months for procuring minors for prostitution in 2008, was unapologetic about his interest in young females. Everyone he suggested has secrets, and he added, compared with my own, they seemed innocuous. People confided to him without feeling awkward or embarrassed. Stewart one time reported being led upstairs to meet Epstein, who showed him countless photographs of him with other rich and powerful people, including Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Epstein told Stewart that the Saudi ruler had, quote, visited him many times, end quote. Other photos, including the convicted pedophile with other controversial public figures, including filmmaker Woody Allen and ex-U.S. President Bill Clinton, both of whom have been accused of sexual misconduct. Some of the alleged victims of Epstein have told how they have received threats and still live in fear despite his death. Speaking with the Mirror, one woman aged 15 at the time of her alleged abuse said, quote, Jeffrey may be gone, but our fears are not. I dare not speak out. It will put mine and my family's safety at risk. Jeffrey was protected by some very powerful people. The threat they possess still hangs over us. A sad state of affair. I'll give you more as it becomes available. Now this warning, folks. In closing, I want to take whatever time I have left to warn you that our gun rights are under attack and get ready to keep yours by force. Look around you. We've had the shootings continued. They're terrible. No doubting that. Remember, the Democrats control the House of Representatives. It's reported the NRA is having a lot of internal problems. You saw the debate that the Dems had. One of the gentlemen that would like to be president promised that he would take your guns away by force if necessary. In Iowa, Sleepy Joe just started what he stated that he wants to ban magazines that hold multiple bullets. Since everybody in the world history, no magazine has ever been manufactured that holds only one cartridge. I guess Joe conspicuously now wants a federal prohibition on all guns with or capable of accepting magazines. Sleepy Joe is so predictable. Beto, that's the one that was demanded in the debate, told you he's going to take your guns. He's advocating a, quote, non-voluntary buyback. That is a.k.a. forced confiscation, folks, of all currently legally owned guns that he doesn't like. Listen carefully to Harris. She said, and I quote, if elected president and you don't surrender your guns, I will sign an executive order and police will show up at your door, end quote. The dreaded NKVD-style knock on the door at midnight is coming to your place near you. At least Harris is brutally candid, unlike most of her mealy-mouthed commissioners. That great South Bend mayor, he supports a new federal ban on assault-style weapons, as well as a voluntary buyback on existing assault-style weapons. We all know from past experience that the voluntary part is a lie. Booker, when elected, will establish a federal registry of all guns, plus a separate federal registry of all individual gun owners. We're going on a list, folks. American citizens who want to continue to own their guns will have to apply, and then reapply every few years. Naturally, non-Democrats won't need to apply. You won't get approved. The San Francisco Board of Supervisors, all liberal Democrats, just declared our NRA to be a domestic terrorist organization. Simultaneously, of course, Antifa enjoys their blessing. Individual NRA members are now terrorists. Walmart's CEO is a liberal Democrat who dubiously claims to be a gun owner himself. You know, they all do. He has sanctimoniously declared his stores will no longer sell to us peons ammunition for short-barreled rifles. Like Sleepy Joe, he's ignorant of the relevant facts pertaining to firearms. That's not surprising. The dogma from Democrat socialists is clear and becoming clearer by the day. When we're in power, we will come to your home and forcefully confiscate your guns, every one of them. We will, of course, retain ours. Past pseudo-pious declarations that we're not coming after your guns, they're all sleazy lie, folks. You can doubt this at your peril. In this time of pending this election, it's time for you to remember your Second Amendment, and remember it when you go in to vote. They're going to come after your guns, folks. They said it in the debate, the last Democrat debate. Every one of them up there is coming after your guns if you elect them president. And if you give them the Senate, the Dems, the Senate, they'll have complete control of our government. And we will become their slaves. That is what's up in 2020. Make it a matter of your efforts. Certainly make it a matter of your prayers to uphold our president, his administration, and the upcoming elections. Our freedoms are at stake. Goodbye until next week.